Dude, come on.
Someone's not muted. All right, guys. So we are on Tuesday. I shouldn't keep you guys too long for today. I'm just going to talk about your assignments for today and then tomorrow and talk about this story, the Hitchhiker, a little bit. So we're going to be working with this for this week and next week. So I just want to give some background information on it. You know, it's one of those things that we do in class all the time without thinking about, but it's not something that I always get to do with you guys. So I'm just going to read some of this background stuff. It's an old story. I think it came out in like the 50s or 60s. Back in the day where like people would actually hitchhike to get from place to place. You don't see many people doing that anymore. It's a little bit sketchier now than it used to be. So it says in the 1930s and 1940s, families gathered around the radio to listen to their favorite shows. One of the plays that audiences loved to hear was The Hitchhiker. It was originally produced and narrated by 23-year-old Orson Welles, who later became a well-known actor and movie director. And this is back like in the old days, right? So kind of with this, when we actually see the text, it is, and you guys have seen it already, it's structured differently. It's not just into paragraphs because it's written as a script, right? So if you have been, seen any play script, it's just like whoever the speaker is and then the dialogue that they say. So that's how this text is set up. So, it does look a little bit different than most of the texts we look at, but it was written for that purpose. A lot of these old time radio plays, they're kind of like, if you think of kind of just like cheesy suspense stories, right? Some type of mystery, something kind of simple like that, but they all kind of have certain things in common. They weren't all like that, but a lot of the ones that I've come across are like that, right? There's like it's like some type of scary story, some type of mystery, right? They just use suspense to kind of get people hooked in it. And when I started this 2 years ago, when I started at Lincoln, I listened to this beforehand, and then like my kids got obsessed with these things. So they're always wanting me to play these old radio plays. They love them. Couple things this kind of has to do with the skills that we've been working on, talking about foreshadowing. It says device that will prepares readers for an event or action that will happen later in the story is called foreshadowing. Foreshadowing provides hints or clues that prepare the reader for what will occur as the plot develops. Look for signs of foreshadowing in the Hitchhiker. So there are a couple things that they mention at the beginning of the text, once our characters are introduced, that do come into play later, right? It's kind of, the author introduces them as just kind of like in passing, like, oh, this happens, right? But when we get to the end of the text, you're like, oh shoot, that's how blank happened, right? I don't want to spoil it for you guys, and I'm sure some of you guys have gotten there already, but if you haven't, I don't want to ruin it for you. So again, this is the beginning. It just looks a little bit different than most texts. Most texts don't start at the beginning and just list the characters, but they do here. Orson Welles, like he's, what I'd call the narrator. So he gives a little thing at the beginning, and then the character's Ronald Adams. He's the main character in this one. Here's his mom, this hitchhiker person, and then, just going through all these other people who are involved in the text. Got some pictures. So here's that Orson Welles dude who we mentioned. He, at the beginning, just like gives this introduction, and that's what a lot of these old-timey kind of radio shows would have. And then we start with this guy, Ronald Adams. Again, it's just him talking, right? So that's all these things, as you can see, character, dialogue, character, dialogue, character, dialogue. So again, it looks a little bit different, but there's not much like descriptions of settings, really like you'd see in a normal text, because this was made for radio, right? And with radio, you only have that audio component to it. It's like listening to a podcast, so they can't rely that much on visuals, right? So it's all just kind of explained through dialogue. There are a couple things where, like, the narrator, the main character, will kind of describe the settings and things like that. But for the most part, it's just kind of built into the dialogue. They kind of have to be sneaky with how they do that. But that's the text. I think with what we're doing today, yesterday was the vocab. You didn't really have to read that much of the text to do that. But with what we're doing today, you'll need to kind of dig into the text. So you have, that is that. Minimize this real quick. Next thing I want to show you guys is this mood and plot assignment. This is for today. So it's kind of similar to, well, we're going to see something that looks like this. Let me just shut up and show you. So as you guys start reading The Hitchhiker today, you're going to do these two things. I'm going to skip to the second part first. This plot form is the exact same as the one we did last week for Born Worker. Same format, lists of characters, lists of settings, point of view. So Ronald Adams, the main character, he's the narrator. So that tells you right there that it's in first person point of view. Characters, I mean, you could copy, they listed them on that first page. They made that pretty easy. Give me some events for the rising action. Give me some events for the climax. What is the climax? And, after reading it, 2 events for the falling action, then resolution. For this one, for the resolution, you're going to be looking for, a conclusion that he comes to, right? Or something that the main character realizes at the end, as opposed to events that happen. When we did Born Worker last week, a lot of you guys nailed the resolution, right? It wasn't that, that Mr. Clemens dude was okay. The resolution was that what Jose, I think his name, what he realized about people, in that, there were good, honest, hardworking people. And then there were people like his cousin who were liars and kind of just swindlers and that type of people. And I think that was a realization he came to. Those are what I'm looking for when we talk about the resolution. It's always those conclusions, those life lessons learned. But I think in The Hitchhiker, it's more of like a realization that he comes to at the end, right? A lot of these old-timey suspense stories, they like to have that twist ending, right? And that's what this story has. Setting refers to the environment in which the story takes place, including time, location, and culture. Setting can influence the story's mood, like it does in this text, or the feeling a reader feels while reading a work, and its tone or the writer's attitude toward the subject. Find the descriptions of the setting in The Hitchhiker. Describe the mood for each passage creates. Explain why you chose that mood, and then describe how it can affect the plot. So what you guys have in this first column is they give you guys different setting descriptions, right? With the settings, the author, they choose those really intentionally, right? They don't just randomly put a pin in a map and say, this is where the story is going to take place. No, they pick places that are going to affect the mood of the story. This one's a really good example. I'm in an auto camp on Route 66, just west of Gallup, New Mexico. There's a little bit more on that page where he describes the scene around him, right? He talks about he's the only person within so many miles. There's no one else around him. The author includes that on purpose. And it's to establish this mood of that lonesome feeling, right? The justification, you just explain it. He's in a remote place all by himself in the middle of the desert. And then how does the setting affect the plot? That meaning they're in this setting, how might that affect the story? It puts the main character in a remote location where he might have to face a challenge alone. These can be, how does it affect the plot? If you've read on, you might know how it affects the plot, and that's might be what you write in that box or type in that box. It might be a well-informed prediction, though, which is fine, too. And again, all of these locations and setting descriptions. Here's the page numbers if you want a little bit more context. I didn't want to put whole paragraphs in these boxes, but just keep in mind that the author chooses all these settings really intentionally. It's not by accident that they include the details that they include. Think of why they did that, right? And that's a lot of this talking about mood and tone, is taking what is written on the text and then going a little bit deeper, trying to get inside the author's mind to figure out why they chose what they chose, what were their intentions. And then the last thing, that's for today. I do want to introduce this stuff for tomorrow. So tomorrow, all your one assignment is going to be with this video, The Fall of the House of Usher. It's like a 15-minute YouTube video based on an old famous story, but the movie's really short, but it works a lot with mood. So I think it's a really good video to do while we're talking about mood and while we're already on it. So here's the link for the video. I'm not going to click on that because I don't want it to play, because then my video will get flagged on YouTube. But this analysis sheet, I will pull. Oh, I forgot something. Before I do that, this plot assignment, something I didn't cover. After you do that stuff about mood for these 3 settings, at the bottom, there's just 2 things I want you to fill out. So find an example of foreshadowing in the text. Use those notes from yesterday to help you with that. And then an example of suspense. Just one example for each of those things. Should be super, super quick, super easy. But tomorrow, while you guys are watching this video, or, after, whatever, I'm going to have you guys fill out this form and submit it to me. So the directions are really similar, like at the beginning for the one we just looked at for the Hitchhiker, and the graphic organizer is really similar too. But what you're going to do, it starts here, right? So as you watch the video, identify scenes and settings in the Fall of the House of Usher video that contribute to the mood. Again, since it's a video, they rely heavily on visuals, right? To set a mood, to set a specific mood. And they included these visuals on purpose. Name the mood it created and then explain how the scene or image contributes to that mood. Here's an example, the scene showing the woman in the coffin in the basement, right? That'll make sense once you watch a movie. I said it's a serious mood, right? You might have another way to describe that, which is totally fine, right? You might say sinister, depressing, right? And you would be correct as long as you can just explain that in your justification. I just said show someone who died a tragic death. The colors used also contribute to the mood. So even things like that, like they have an outside setting at one point, towards the end, and like the sky is red, which is another deliberate choice that the director made, right? So it's like, those are the things I want you guys to be kind of focusing on and thinking about, is why they made all these small little choices in this movie, right? Because they all do affect the mood. And for this one, again, I think we're coming up with just 5 scene descriptions, mood, and then justifications. On the second page, if you look here, if you're having trouble thinking of like words to describe moods, here's just a little word bank here. You don't have to choose the ones from here, but sometimes I know I'm trying to like figure something out, and I'm like, well, how do I word this? And that's how you guys can do it. Just pick something from here. And again, that's for tomorrow. I'm gonna go back in here. Anyone have any questions? You can either unmute and say them, or you can just type them in the chat.